What happens when royalty meets reality television and refuses to play by the rules? In just 38 seconds, a prince goes from guest to gone in the most spectacular meltdown ever captured on late-night TV. This is the night that changed everything. The night Prince Harry walked onto the set of Gutfeld, thinking he owned the place, and walked off in disgrace after a confrontation so intense that producers are still talking about it. This is that story. The stage was set for what should have been a simple interview. Greg Gutfeld, known for his quick wit and no-nonsense approach to hosting, welcomed Prince Harry onto his show with the kind of courtesy you would expect. The audience applauded. The cameras rolled. Everything seemed perfectly normal. "Welcome to the show," Gutfeld said, extending his hand for a handshake. "Thanks for being here tonight." Prince Harry took his seat without acknowledging the greeting properly, barely making eye contact. He adjusted his jacket and looked around the studio like he was inspecting it for flaws. Already, something felt off. The energy in the room shifted. You could feel it. Gutfeld, ever the professional, pressed forward. "So, let's dive right in. You've been very vocal lately about a lot of different issues. I thought we could have an honest conversation about some of them tonight." "Honest?" Prince Harry interrupted, a slight smirk forming on his face. That's rich coming from someone who makes a living twisting words for entertainment. The audience went quiet. Gutfeld paused, his expression remaining calm, but you could see the gears turning. He was not expecting this level of hostility right out of the gate. "Well, I actually pride myself on being pretty straightforward," Gutfeld responded, keeping his tone measured. "But hey, if you've got concerns about how this conversation is going to go, we can address that. I'm all ears." Prince Harry leaned back in his chair, spreading his arms wide across the back of the seat in a display of casual arrogance. "Look, I know how these things work. You ask loaded questions, I give answers, and then you edit it all down to make me look however you want. That's the game, right?" Gutfeld shook his head slowly. "Actually, no. This is live television. What you say is what goes out. There's no editing here. So whatever comes out of your mouth right now, that's all you." This fact seemed to catch Prince Harry off guard for just a moment, but he recovered quickly. "Fine. Then let's talk about how you people in the media have been treating me and my family for years. The lies, the invasions of privacy, all of it." "You people?" Gutfeld asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm just one guy hosting a show. I'm not the entire media." "You're part of the problem," Prince Harry shot back, his voice rising slightly. "You sit here in your comfortable chair, making jokes about things you don't understand, about people whose lives you could never comprehend." The audience was completely silent now. This was not going the way anyone expected. Gutfeld remained composed, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Okay, I hear you," Gutfeld said, "but you agreed to come on this show. Nobody forced you to be here. So if you've got something specific you want to talk about, let's talk about it. That's why you're here, right?" Prince Harry laughed, but it was not a friendly laugh. It was dismissive, almost mocking. "I'm here because my publicist thought it would be good for my image. But sitting here now, looking at you, I'm wondering why I bothered." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Gutfeld's smile faded just slightly. "Well, that's pretty rude, if I'm being honest. I invited you here as a guest. I've been nothing but respectful, and you're sitting there insulting me on my own show." "Respectful?" Prince Harry scoffed. "You want to talk about respect? How about the respect I deserve as someone who has served his country, who has dedicated his life to charitable causes, who has actually made a difference in the world? What have you done besides sit behind a desk and crack jokes?" The audience gasped. Even the cameramen looked uncomfortable. This was crossing a line, and everyone knew it. Gutfeld took a deep breath. You could see him making a choice in that moment, deciding how to respond. When he spoke, his voice was firm, but controlled. "Listen, I have a lot of respect for your military service. I really do. And I think the charitable work you've done is commendable. But you don't get to come on my show and talk down to me like I'm beneath you. I don't care what your last name is or what family you were born into. That doesn't give you the right to be disrespectful. Prince Harry's face flushed red. Disrespectful? You want to see disrespectful? How about every tabloid article, every late-night joke, every invasion of privacy my family has endured? And you're all complicit in it. Every single one of you. I've never written a tabloid article about you, Gutfeld countered. I've made maybe 2 or 3 jokes in passing, and they were pretty tame. You're lumping me in with a bunch of people I have nothing to do with. That's not fair, and you know it. Fair? Prince Harry practically shouted now. Nothing about this has been fair. Nothing about my entire life has been fair. The entitled attitude was on full display now. Here was someone who had lived a life of privilege and luxury, sitting on a talk show complaining about fairness to a man who had worked his way up from nothing. Gutfeld leaned forward, his elbows on his desk. You know what? A lot of people watching right now have real problems, real struggles. They're worried about paying their bills, keeping their jobs, feeding their families. And you're sitting here, someone who has never had to worry about any of those things, complaining about how unfair your life has been. Do you hear how that sounds? Prince Harry stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. I don't have to sit here and be lectured by you. You're absolutely right, Gutfeld said, standing up as well. You don't have to be here, but if you're going to be here, you need to show some basic decency. That's all I'm asking for. Decency? Prince Harry's voice dripped with contempt. You wouldn't know decency if it hit you in the face. You're just another American talking head who thinks he knows everything about everyone. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. Then tell me, Gutfeld said, opening his hands in a gesture of openness. That's literally what I invited you here to do. Have a conversation. Share your perspective. But instead, you've spent the last 5 minutes attacking me personally for things I haven't even done. Prince Harry pointed his finger at Gutfeld, his hand shaking slightly with anger. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You sit there acting all innocent, like you're just trying to have a conversation, but it's all an act. It's all manipulation. The audience was starting to murmur now. Some people were shaking their heads. Others looked genuinely shocked at what they were witnessing. This was supposed to be a normal interview, maybe a little pointed, but nothing like this. Gutfeld's patience was clearly wearing thin, but he maintained his composure. Look, I've tried to be patient here. I've tried to give you the benefit of the doubt, but you're making this impossible. Every question I try to ask, you turn it into an attack. Every olive branch I extend, you slap away. So what do you actually want from this conversation? What do I want? Prince Harry laughed bitterly. I want you to admit that you and everyone like you have made a career out of tearing people like me down. I want some accountability for once. Accountability for what? Gutfeld asked, his voice rising slightly for the first time. I haven't torn you down. I've barely talked about you at all. You're creating this whole narrative in your head about what you think I represent, and you're attacking me for it. That's not accountability. That's projection. Prince Harry's jaw clenched. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. You don't have that right. I'm not psychoanalyzing you, Gutfeld replied. I'm pointing out what's happening right now, in real time, on live television. You came here with an agenda, and that agenda was to pick a fight. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded. An agenda? Prince Harry's voice went up an octave. I came here to try to have a genuine conversation, and you've turned it into this circus. I've turned it into a circus? Gutfeld looked genuinely incredulous now. You've spent this entire time insulting me, questioning my integrity, and acting like I'm personally responsible for every bad thing that's ever happened to you. And somehow, I'm the one who turned this into a circus? The tension was reaching breaking point. Everyone in the studio could feel it. The producers were probably having heart attacks in the control room. This was not how these things were supposed to go. Prince Harry took a step toward the desk, his posture aggressive. You know what your problem is? You're so used to being the smartest guy in the room, the one with all the clever comebacks, that you can't handle it when someone challenges you. Gutfeld remained seated, refusing to be intimidated. Challenge me all you want. That's fine. That's what makes for good television. But there's a difference between challenging someone and being flat out disrespectful. You crossed that line about 10 minutes ago. Oh, I crossed a line? Prince Harry's voice was thick with sarcasm. That's precious. You cross lines every single night with the things you say, the people you mock, the issues you trivialize. But the moment someone calls you out on it, suddenly you're the victim. I've never claimed to be a victim, Gutfeld said evenly. I'm just asking you to treat me with the same respect you're demanding from me. It's pretty simple, actually. Prince Harry shook his head in disgust. You're impossible. This whole thing is impossible. I should never have agreed to this. Well, we agree on something at least, Gutfeld muttered, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. That comment seemed to be the final straw. Prince Harry's face went from red to nearly purple. What did you just say? Gutfeld looked him straight in the eye. I said we agree on something. You shouldn't have come here, because clearly you didn't come here to have a conversation. You came here to grandstand and play the victim and blame everyone else for your problems. And honestly, I'm tired of it. The audience erupted in a mix of gasps and a few scattered cheers. Some people couldn't believe what they were hearing. Others were clearly on Gutfeld's side. Prince Harry looked around at the audience, seeming shocked that they weren't automatically supporting him. This is unbelievable. You're all unbelievable. Hey, don't blame them, Gutfeld interjected. They didn't do anything except watch you come on here and act entitled and rude. If you're upset about how this went, look in the mirror. That was it. That was the moment everything exploded. Prince Harry slammed his hand down on Gutfeld's desk, making a loud bang that echoed through the studio. How dare you? How dare you speak to me that way? Do you have any idea who I am? And there it was, the question that revealed everything. Do you know who I am? The entitled refrain of someone who believed their status should shield them from criticism. Gutfeld stood up slowly, his voice calm but with an edge of steel. Yeah, I know exactly who you are. You're a guest on my show who has spent the last 15 minutes disrespecting me, insulting me, and acting like the world owes you something. And I'm done with it. You're done with it? Prince Harry laughed incredulously. You're done with it? I'm the one who's done here. I don't need this. I don't need you. I don't need any of this. Then leave, Gutfeld said simply. The door's right there. Nobody's keeping you here. The studio went dead silent. It was a standoff. Prince Harry stood there, chest heaving, clearly not expecting Gutfeld to actually tell him to go. For a moment, it seemed like he might back down, might try to salvage the situation, but his pride wouldn't let him. Fine, Prince Harry spat out. I will leave. But don't think this is over. Don't think you can treat me like this and just get away with it. Gutfeld crossed his arms. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Prince Harry shot back. Well, I'll be sure to lose sleep over it, Gutfeld replied with a sardonic smile. Prince Harry ripped off his microphone, the wire yanking free from the battery pack with a sharp snap. He threw it down on the chair and started walking toward the exit. But he couldn't resist one final parting shot. He turned back, pointing at Gutfeld. You're everything that's wrong with this country. You and your smug attitude and your echo chamber of an audience. You're all the same. Gutfeld didn't flinch. And you're everything that's wrong with entitled celebrity culture. Thinking you can say whatever you want, treat people however you want, and face no consequences because of your last name. So, I guess we're even. Prince Harry's mouth opened like he was going to say something else, but no words came out. He was speechless, perhaps for the first time in the entire encounter. His face twisted in fury and embarrassment. Without another word, he turned and stormed off the set. The sound of his footsteps echoed as he disappeared through the exit door. The slam of that door closing was like a gunshot in the quiet studio. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The audience sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. Then, another person. Then, another. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet, applauding. Not for the spectacle, but for Gutfeld's refusal to be bullied on his own show. Gutfeld stood there, looking slightly shell-shocked himself. He ran his hand through his hair and let out a long breath. "Well," he said into his microphone, "that was not what I had planned for tonight." The audience laughed, a release of all the tension that had been building. Gutfeld sat back down at his desk, shaking his head with a wry smile. "You know, I've had a lot of interesting guests on this show. People I've disagreed with, people who have challenged me, people who have made me think. And that's great. That's what this show is supposed to be about. Different perspectives, honest debate, real conversation." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "But what you just saw was not that. That was someone who came here not to have a conversation, but to lecture, not to exchange ideas, but to demand agreement. And when he didn't get it, when he was actually asked to defend his positions and show some basic respect, he couldn't handle it." The audience applauded again, clearly agreeing with his assessment. Gutfeld continued, "I don't care who you are. I don't care what your title is, or what family you come from, or how famous you are. If you come on this show, you're going to be treated like everyone else. With respect, sure, but also with honesty. And if you can't handle that, then maybe late-night television isn't for you." He shuffled some papers on his desk, a gesture that felt almost therapeutic after the chaos. "I really did want to have a good conversation tonight," he said, and you could hear the genuine disappointment in his voice. "I had questions prepared about his charity work, about his experiences, about his perspective on things. Real questions, not gotcha questions, not traps, just honest curiosity about someone with a unique life experience." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. This was not a host gloating about winning a confrontation. This was someone genuinely frustrated that an opportunity for meaningful dialogue had been wasted. But instead, Gutfeld went on, "We got what we got." And honestly, I think it's pretty revealing. When someone comes at you with that much hostility right from the start, when they're that defensive and combative without provocation, it tells you something. It tells you they're not interested in dialogue. They're interested in monologue. The audience murmured in agreement. Gutfeld leaned back in his chair. "You know what the ironic part is? He kept accusing me of not respecting him, of treating him badly, of being part of some media conspiracy against him. But I didn't do any of those things. I didn't attack him. I didn't mock him. I didn't try to make him look bad. He did that all by himself." Another round of applause. The audience was fully on Gutfeld's side now, if they hadn't been already. "And that's the thing about respect," Gutfeld said thoughtfully. "It's a two-way street. You can't demand it while refusing to give it. You can't expect people to treat you with courtesy while you're treating them with contempt. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works." He looked around at his audience, many of whom were nodding along with his words. "I've been doing this job for a long time," he said. "I've interviewed politicians, celebrities, authors, activists, all kinds of people. And you know what I've learned? The truly important people, the truly accomplished people, they don't need to remind you of their status. They don't need to pull rank. They don't need to say, 'Do you know who I am?' Because their character and their accomplishments speak for themselves." The wisdom in those words seemed to resonate with everyone in the room. Gutfeld smiled slightly. So yeah, that happened. That really just happened on live television. I'm still processing it, to be honest. I mean, I've had guests walk off before. Usually it's because they don't like a question or they feel like they're being cornered. But this was different. This was someone who came in hot and stayed hot the entire time. He glanced toward the exit where Prince Harry had disappeared. I hope he's okay, genuinely. I hope he gets whatever help or support he needs. But I also hope he learns that you can't go through life expecting everyone to bow down to you. Life doesn't work that way. People don't work that way. The audience gave him a standing ovation. Gutfeld looked genuinely touched by the support. "Thank you," he said, his voice a bit softer now. "Thank you for sticking with me through that. I know it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me too. But I think it was important that we all saw what we saw. No editing, no spin, no manipulation. Just two people having a very real, very raw exchange." He straightened his papers one more time, composing himself. "All right," he said, his tone shifting back to his usual cadence. "We've still got a show to do. We've got other guests, we've got segments planned, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let that disaster derail the whole night." The audience cheered, appreciating his determination to move forward. But before he could transition to the next segment, Gutfeld paused one more time. "Actually, you know what? One more thing. To anyone watching who might be in a similar position, who might have some platform or some status or some level of fame, let me tell you something. Your title doesn't make you better than anyone else. Your wealth doesn't make you more important. Your fame doesn't give you license to treat people poorly." His voice grew more passionate as he spoke. At the end of the day, we're all just people. We all deserve respect. We all deserve to be heard. And we all have a responsibility to treat each other with basic human decency. If you can't do that, if you think you're above that, then you've already lost. You've already failed at the most fundamental level of being a human being. The audience erupted in the loudest applause yet. People were on their feet again, whistling and cheering. Gutfeld looked genuinely moved. He put his hand over his heart in a gesture of appreciation. "Thank you. Really, thank you for that." As the applause died down and people took their seats again, you could feel the energy in the room shifting. What had started as tension and confrontation was transforming into something else. Unity, solidarity, a shared understanding that they had all witnessed something significant. Gutfeld took a sip of water, cleared his throat, and looked into the camera with a more relaxed expression. "Okay, so obviously we're going to have to adjust the rest of tonight's show on the fly. That whole segment was supposed to be about 20 minutes, and it lasted about half that before what happened. The audience chuckled, the tension finally breaking into something lighter. "So, here's what we're going to do," Gutfeld announced. "We're going to take a quick break, regroup, and come back with our other scheduled guests, who, and I'm just going out on a limb here, will hopefully be a bit more pleasant to talk to." More laughter from the audience. "And if not," Gutfeld added with a grin, "well, I guess we'll deal with that when we get there. But I'm optimistic. I choose to believe that lightning doesn't strike twice in one night." As the show cut to commercial, Gutfeld sat back in his chair and exhaled deeply. The cameras were still rolling in the background, catching his unguarded moment. He looked tired, but also strangely energized, like someone who had just survived something intense and come out the other side. The confrontation was over. The damage was done. Prince Harry was gone, his exit as dramatic and entitled as his entire presence on the show had been. And Gutfeld remained, professional and composed, ready to continue with his show despite the chaos that had just unfolded. It was a moment that would be replayed over and over. A moment that would be analyzed and discussed and debated. A moment where entitlement met reality and reality won. Because at the end of the day, no amount of royal blood or famous last names can shield you from the consequences of your own behavior, and no amount of perceived status gives you the right to disrespect someone who has done nothing to deserve it. Gutfeld had stood his ground. He had refused to be bullied or intimidated. He had treated his guest with respect, right up until that respect was thrown back in his face. And then he had done what any person with self-respect would do. He had called it out. He had set boundaries. And he had ultimately asked his guest to leave when those boundaries were repeatedly violated. It was not about winning or losing. It was about dignity, about mutual respect, about the fundamental principle that fame and status do not elevate you above basic human decency. The audience understood this. That is why they applauded. That is why they stood. Not because they enjoyed seeing conflict, but because they recognized someone standing up for themselves and for the standards we should all aspire to in how we treat each other. As the commercial break ended and the show prepared to resume, Gutfeld straightened his jacket and put his professional face back on. But there was something different in his demeanor now, a quiet confidence, a sense that he had been tested and had passed that test. The rest of the show would go on. Other guests would come and go. Other topics would be discussed. But nothing would quite match the intensity of those 15 minutes when a prince walked onto a talk show set and walked off in disgrace, brought down not by anyone else, but by his own entitled attitude and inability to show basic respect.